Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unfiltered Non-Profit Podcast. I'm Cherry Chen, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. If you're new here, this podcast is all about diving into the real world of nonprofit leadership. We share inspiring stories, experiences, and the truth about what it takes to run a successful nonprofit. Think of it as your personal mastermind session on the go. Now let's get to today's episode. I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Beth McMahon. Beth is a true leader in the nonprofit sector with over 20 years of executive experience, although you can't really tell. She's been instrumental in growing and strengthening nonprofit organizations by harnessing the best from boards, members, and staff. Since 2016, Beth has been at the helm of the Canadian Institute of Planners, CIP, leading efforts on important issues like climate change, healthy communities, reconciliation and equity, diversity and inclusion. In 2024, she received the Social Innovation Leader Award from the Canadian Society of Association Executives, CSAE. This award recognizes leaders who are dedicated to exploring new ideas and promoting sustainable and inclusive and collaborative practices by adopting innovative and creative strategies and initiatives to leverage CSAE's community. As a great example, she brought in a big piece of laminated table mat to the recording studio when we were recording our podcast, and that immediately sparked my curiosity. This table mat turned out to be her secret sauce for ensuring that her board and management team stay focused on their strategic plan. And this simple yet effective tool has been a game changer in maintaining a cohesion and direction with her organization. Now, if you want to learn how to create a cohesive team that aligns with strategic goals, you won't want to miss this episode. So let's not wait any longer. Please welcome Beth McMahon to the Unfiltered Non-Profit Podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to this new episode of Unfiltered Non-Profit Podcast. Today I have a very special guest here with us. Her name is Beth McMahon, a new name that I'm just learning how to pronounce, thank you. And she is the Executive Director from the Canadian Institute of Planners, CIP. And welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
Yes. Can
Great
you
to be
tell
here.
us a little bit about you and your role and your journey and everything?
Sure, I'd love to. It's honestly, this is like my 20-year anniversary of kind of being in an executive leadership role of a nonprofit. So
You
I
look
started.
young.
Oh, I did start young though. I mean, it's true. And truly, 20 years ago, I drove across the country to the Maritimes, where I got my first executive director role with the Atlantic Canadian Organic Regional Network.
Wow.
And it was a part-time position. It was far more demanding than a part-time position. It was more like a 1.5 times position, but they didn't have the money, right, to pay me for that. And they were pretty young as an organization, but had really a strong vision and amazing volunteer leadership. But I was out of my house, and I was young, and so it gave me the opportunity, that I was really looking forward to be in that leadership role and to show that what I could do.
That sounded crazy because you drove all across from Ontario all the way to Atlantic Canada to take on a part-time job.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just finishing up. So I should maybe back up and just say, like, throughout, my childhood and high school years, I was pretty keen on volunteering and active, as a candy striper and in Kiwanis Club and even in my church. And I just would always raise my hand for any of those volunteer opportunities that came up. And I did the same in university and got involved in fundraising and had a couple fundraising roles, which I really enjoyed. I really they're challenging, and asking people for money isn't easy. But when you see the connection of why you're asking for money and what the impact can be in the community or the people or what it is that you're actually trying to support. it's not that difficult. And so, I think, but not everybody can really see that. So I had several doors kind of open for me because I had made that connection already, and I wasn't nervous to do it.
Most people would, sorry.
Yeah, no.
No, most people would be, honestly, I see so many people, particularly women, maybe because I'm a woman, struggling to ask for money.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Even when I remember telling my Nana that I had been hired by the Victorian Order of Nurses here in Ottawa as a fundraising coordinator, and my Nana was like, "You call people at dinner time and ask them for money?" And I was like, no, and, because we were doing, much more developed campaigns. And so it was just so funny, she was just, she didn't understand, but I think she understood, the reason for the role and the importance of it, and how it would give back to the community and to more vulnerable populations. So... yeah, I just, I had some really amazing, managers and, CEOs and people that inspired me. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to run an organization.
You got what you asked for.
Yeah. So I had this opportunity, and, being so young, and I was like, well, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have kids. I was married at the time, but it was like, you know what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, what have you lost already?
So did it work out? That's my follow-up question.
Absolutely. But it wasn't through, lack of really long hours. Like, I'd probably work 70 hours a week. Like, and really, I was not paid well. But you do it because you care so much, and you see the opportunity, and there's this positive feedback loop of, like, incremental progress, or, a new funding, grant comes in. And I was a pretty strong grant writer at this point, and my team was growing. And so I was there actually 8 years and went from, kind of this part-time position to obviously a full-time position. And 6 staff in an office.
Wow.
We'd signed an MOU with the 3 maritime governments for operational funding, which was, pretty unheard of, and grown our conference into something that was really one of the most anticipated kind of events of the year for the members. I felt really, really happy with what had been accomplished during that time.
How did you convince the government? I think that's one of the greatest questions right at this moment for a lot of nonprofit leaders, especially when they are trying to get grants these days from the government. How did you even get them to say, yes, we'll share the cost?
And probably if it was today, I don't know if I could have. I mean, it was a different time, right? This is now like 15 years ago. And times have changed, right? That operational funding is different. But we, really had the benefit of having really interested government contacts in what it was that we were trying to do. It was also a time when Canada, like the federal government, was considering and then developing the organic product regulations. And it was the first new agricultural regulation they had developed in 40 years. And so there was obviously like a government interest in supporting this and seeing it as a new market. And so telling the story of what the economic impact had the potential to be in really agriculturally based provinces. And so it was exciting. It was something new, and there was definitely a lot of support. And I think just for them to see how much the members and the farmers were putting into it. So, there was really we had, I think, a very compelling story, and we were already showing that we were doing so much with so little. And the other important thing, I think, in telling that kind of economic story was that a lot of younger farmers were really drawn to this. And so saying, you're looking at developing future markets, value-add markets, and we are the ones that are drawing in 22, 25, 30-year-old farmers who are saying, I want to be here, I want to develop, new products, I want to sell here, I want to export, I'm going to develop a whole new value-add product. That had a lot of appeal. And so I think that really helped at that moment in time.
I 100% agree. Like this is what I come across though. Yes, you have a compelling story and there is a need, but you put the two and two together because the organization itself is for telling, essentially advocating for the farmers and the new standards, and you are the one that's maybe not you, but you and your team all together have to build that relationship and communicating the value being delivered. So kudos to you. By really talking to these people and building relationship with them.
Yeah, I think, again, I was so deeply committed. In these types of roles, you put so much of yourself into it that if you, again, it's like going back to fundraising, if you don't believe in what it is that you're doing and the, mission and vision of the organization, it's really hard. It's really hard to convince somebody to invest their own professional time or the resources of their organization or business. And so, you have to be authentic about it. Like people will see right through it. Or it's hard to sustain. You could maybe fake it for a little bit, but if you don't have that, real belief, it's going to fade. Something else is going to pull you off into another 100%. Direction.
You're very passionate. You are a very passionate person in general. So kudos to you. And that translate over and bring it over, that passion to your daily job. Yeah. So you also told me earlier that you, in this particular role, you had created this event that is one of the most anticipated events in the industry. And it is a profit center for the organization. Yeah. One of the things that was successful was the sponsorship. How does the sponsorship work that make it so successful?
Sure. And there had been so when I came into the organization, they had a conference. They really didn't make any money off the conference. But it was that anchor event and everybody comes together and it's good networking. And so it was really, I think, one of the things, maybe coming from fundraising, is I'm pretty good with numbers. And I like them, right? I kind of like to make money, which is funny hearing somebody who is a nonprofit, executive, but I like to make money so I can invest it back, right? And see that growth. So in looking at this conference, there was a lot of opportunity, I thought, as a growing profession to bring in more sponsors. Because, the individuals, they have a hard time. You have to pay for hotel and travel and registration. And so it's difficult to ask them to give more, right? And they're giving up time and out of their own, families and farms. And so it was really about looking at that business development opportunity. And so in one of the things that I did is, I think the model when I came in was kind of that like bronze, silver, gold, and it was it didn't feel like it really was authentic to what this organization was and, what the value proposition was. And so it was really about thinking about what it is that, a sponsor or a new sponsor might be looking for. And so is it, maybe it's just renaming, but you can't just rename something. So, again, we did the friend of and champion of levels. And tried to find ways to provide value within the sponsorship and in partnership offerings that didn't cost us anything, really, because we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot to give. And so trying to find some of those things that, would elevate, a sponsor, showcase them the way they wanted, that didn't end up taking away from the profit center that this opportunity was. And how do you find that out is by having those conversations. So it was really like you might put together certain packages, but you really have to have that conversation to understand why it is that they're coming or why they might be interested in your event. Or maybe, for me, I would go to other events and be like, hey, why are you exhibiting here, but you're not at our conference? And again, not feeling, like hesitancy to ask that type of question. And then being like, oh, it's because, we really need, I don't know, a different level of profile, or we want to speak, or, and having those conversations and being open to it and not being so kind of fixed in what it is that your different sponsor levels are providing. And so I think because of that, we were able to do better kind of matchmaking of what it was that a sponsor wanted and what we could offer them. And not everybody wants the limelight. I think sometimes you think, oh, everyone's going to want to speak and get up in front of the room. And that is absolutely not the case. Absolutely not. Some people just want to have like a representative of their company there at your event so they can, because they're already working with the, with the delegates, and just to say, hey, we're here. We're like, you have questions, ask us anything, like, and to provide that familiar face and that continuity. And we had, some exhibitors who just would come back year after year because they were developing those relationships, and then they'd go and they'd do site visits along the way. And then we had others who were like, I have a new business and I really want to get out in front and tell people why we're different or what we have. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe you can moderate a session. And so you're not there and you're not selling somebody something, right? Because you're not going to sell something in a conference session. But they all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I recognize you, and you said something that piqued my interest, and I'm going to go talk to you later. And so it was really, I think, approaching it at a more individual level.
Yeah.
And that I don't think that had been done before. There just probably wasn't capacity.
Yeah,
But again, I was working too much, and I was like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But it paid off, right? Like it paid off, and those relationships have been sustained.
Sorry. Well, that was amazing because, like I mentioned before, I have sponsored events, and I am also I'm also the one that receives sponsorship in different capacity. And I run an organization. I help run an organization that receives sponsorships, and I think it's so important to have those conversations. As simple as having those conversations and creating a customized solution to meet their need. And sometimes, like you said, people just want to show up and have the booth and don't need anything, and they're perfectly happy. So I totally echo this individual approach. And for those people who are listening and they have problems raising funds and selling sponsorship, maybe this could be something to start them off. That's a great tip. Thank you. Okay, we're still at your first job. I felt like, we haven't come to CIP yet. So how did you come to CIP, and what happened when you first joined CIP?
Yep. So I had a couple other jobs between my position with ACORN, the Atlantic Canadian Organic Regional Network, and which basically brought me to Ottawa, right? So I had got great experience, working in two other, associations. And when the position for CIP opened up and I saw it just seemed to connect really well with, what my background was, what they were looking for. I have my master's in environmental studies, which also happened to be part of the planning program. Like this is like urban planners, not financial planners or party planners.
Party planners.
Yeah. People are always like, what's a planner? And again, like people who, had a really compelling, I guess, vision for what their institute, was and could be and grow into, and the individual memberships who, who really care about communities. So I felt like I would be a really great fit at a personal level for the organization. And again, because I throw myself into things the way I do, I was like, this seems good. And so when I basically came to CIP in the institute just turned 105 years old on May 30th. So I joined in 2016, and they had just gone through a major shift in governance. They basically had moved from a federated model to an individual membership model. Their entire set of bylaws had been rewritten. Their whole board had changed over. It was a really transitional time, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Financially, the membership, they had lost members. There was a lot of, I think, relationships to rebuild during this, especially with like the provincial regulator associations. And so I came into this very, very blind, very green with what they had gone through. And the other thing is that the whole staff had changed over. I think we have one staff member right now out of our 12 who is from, kind of the before time. And thank goodness she's amazing. But everybody was new. So when I was hired, I did that like meet and greet with everybody. And I was like, how long have you been here? And everyone was like, 6 weeks, 2 months. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
So there was a lot of learning capacity building that had to be done. So since then, so I'm 8 years in, and our revenues are up by over 60%. Our membership's up over 40%, and our membership satisfaction's at the highest level it's ever been. So we're in the high 80s right now. So it's really it's totally done a 180 and proven the model. And, I think there's a real energy in this very senior state of an institute. And, a big part of that is because the members care so deeply about the profession and what it stands for. The board has done a really great job in updating and revisioning what the institute can do and the role it can play. Again, we're not a regulator. It's within the Confederacy. It's the provinces that have the responsibility for professional, regulations, for the most part. And so at the national level, we can be strong advocates and, for particular issues or education and so it's really been about thinking about what that means and the value we can bring to the members.
So in our earlier conversation, we talked about that. You also mentioned that the membership has grown essentially from when you first took over, and also the organization was at the blink of having financial trouble. Wouldn't say bankruptcy per se, but having some financial hardship, right? Uncertainty. And the whole team was brand new at the time. Now, it seems like, and it sounds like, obviously, in my life, my business, there's always something new happening every single day. But at the same time, it sounds like it has matured and it has become a mature and stable organization under your leadership. So the first thing that I want to ask, I'm going to ask a couple, but the first thing that I want to ask is about your membership. How did you grow the membership? What does that mean by changing the model from federated to individual membership?
Well, I feel like every answer I have is sometimes it's complicated. So within the Canadian Institute of Planners, there are some provinces that require their members to belong to CIP. There are other provinces that do not. And during this transition, Ontario, which is the largest province in terms of the membership, said our members don't need to belong to CIP. We will not collect member dues for CIP. You're on your own.
So before they were collecting on behalf, and then during this bylaw change, when you step in, they're saying, no, we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, just before I came in. So this was already a done deal. I came in. This was the new model. And then once I'm in place, Alberta says, we will collect your member fees, but we're not requiring our members to belong. And so that was a big, oh, gosh, what's going to happen here? And then throughout all of this, Quebec is different. They have a different regulatory, environment. And so their membership has always been optional. And whoever wants to join from Quebec can, and we just have that direct relationship with them. We have actually very good relationships, with all of the provincial associations and regulators now. But, back when I came in, it was not the case. So I think, over these, last years has been building trust, building relationships, finding opportunities to find common ground. And so, and the other thing is about really building that relationship with the members. So, I really I think our members, you can just see what they put into the organization to even get it to the point where they were able to update the bylaws and make this change. That was all done on, volunteer effort and capacity. And they really, really feel that having this, institute is so important to who they are as a profession. They didn't want to lose it. So we definitely have those members who are I've always been part of CIP. I want to belong. But then we have new members coming up who are like, I don't know what CIP is. I'm a new planner. What difference does it make? So one of the things that I think I've done just to make sure that I understand the pulse of the membership, it's an annual membership survey. And I truly read every single comment, and they write a lot, that a member's put in. And so from that, you can really see what it is that they're thinking about. And sometimes it's things that are out of your control. Oftentimes it is. You're like, oh, that's a regulatory thing, or that's a political thing that's happening. But you can kind of see, are your members stressed? Are they feeling, just like a sense of opportunity to grow, or, mental health concerns coming up. So because I've put this in place and I do this every single year, I feel like I can really kind of get a sense of who our members are, even though we now have over 9,000 members.
Wow.
And so, that part I think has really helped. And of course, you do the regular surveying and see, or stats, we're always tracking certain KPIs. What are people coming to? What sessions are people signing up for at conference? So in the last 18 months, the big change for us has been we've developed a new membership database. And that database is now shared by all provinces except Quebec, again, because they're different. But now Ontario's come into it. And so now all the Ontario members are asked, do you want to belong to CIP? And all the Alberta members are asked, do you want to belong to CIP? And the membership fees are all collected at once. It makes it easy for members. And so as a result, we have substantially grown our membership.
Wow.
And our members, actually, when we announced that we were having this single invoicing option, I remember at our AGM, one of our members stood up and yelled, "Hallelujah!"
Wow.
So they had missed this, right? Because we used to have this joint invoicing. So it's made all the difference. Our members are much happier. We have to talk across all the provincial associations. We make changes together. Everyone has a very similar way of reporting, member professional learning credits. Membership transfers are, a lot easier. Everybody's using the same system.
The database, your
database. So, and it helps, so what happens is that CIP, built the database and pays for, kind of the general operating costs on an annual basis. And any of the upgrades or extra add-ons that people or that these provinces want will cost share those. But everything's kind of held by CIP, and then that lends capacity, especially to some of those smaller associations.
Hello, Unfiltered Non-Profit listeners. It's Cherry Chen here, your host and the CEO of Otis Financial Solutions. Let's talk about something that can be a major headache for many nonprofits, managing your finances. Are you feeling overwhelmed by budgeting, financial reports, or keeping up with compliance? You're not alone. Many nonprofit leaders struggle with these issues too, but you don't have to. At Otis Financial Solutions, we specialize in making financial management easy for nonprofit leaders and associations leaders. For over 18 years, we've been turning financial stress into peace of mind. Our services are designed to meet your unique needs, from day-to-day bookkeeping to strategic financial planning. Imagine having more time to focus on your mission, knowing that your finances are in experts' hands. If that sounds like something you need, I'm offering a no-obligation 20-minute consultation. Let's discuss your challenges and explore how Otis can help you achieve your goals. Visit nonprofitcfo.ca to book your call today. Let's simplify your financial management together. So it sounds like, if you allow me to summarize, is that you guys really approach the provinces, particularly Ontario and also Alberta, and ask them what they really want and created this database that everybody can benefit from at your own cost, and show them your value before you go back and work out this single invoice. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think there was some other, what ended up happening and why it came to this point that it happened at that moment in time is that the database that we were all using, and Ontario had a separate one, but the database host came to us and said, we're sunsetting your program.
Oh.
So we were kind of we knew that we had to build something. We didn't necessarily want to build it at that particular moment in time under such a tight timeline, but it really, it put the line in the sand. It was like, if we're going to do this, we have to do this now. And because we've been building up this relationship, I think there was already that level of trust there. So it was like, okay, this makes sense. The members were asking for this too. So it wasn't just about what is it that the administrator wants or the executive director of a particular association wants. It was because the members were saying, this is important to us.
So then you jump in, lean in again.
Yeah.
Yes. That sounds like a common theme among what you do. In your first job as an executive director, when there is a government contract, you listen. What I'm trying to say is that you listen to these opportunities and see the needs of the members and then come together and put something together. And this is another example of that.
Yeah. And it's not the easiest path, I mean, there's a lot. It would have been way easier for us to just all go off on our own. Mm-hmm. But I think there would have been a significant cost to the organization.
Yeah. No, this sounds amazing. Now, so I know that when you sat down, you showed me immediately your laminated mat.
Yeah.
And there is a story behind these mats. Tell us a little bit about this mat.
So this is a laminated placemat that we developed when we launched our new strategic plan in July 2022. It was a big, obviously coming out of COVID. Yeah. We basically reset kind of the whole organization's direction again. Yep. We had a new mission and vision, new values, and new strat plan. And so it's really a way that I was able to continue to remind the board, made up of individual planners, why we were there, what it was that we were doing together. And it's been, I think, really important because, boards have a very limited amount of time together. Yep. A limited amount of time to contribute voluntarily into the organization. And so I think you need to be hyper focused on the why. Yeah. And to know that, you have precious resources, and if you need to choose between multiple options, you should have this roadmap. And it's not to say that you can't deviate from that, but you should be really intentional on why you would be deviating from it. So I think, moving again, because the organization had gone through such a big, reset in this 2015, 2016 time period, the board had been a working board. And so they had been in there and making sure that the Institute stayed afloat and had a future. And they did an amazing job. But when I came in, they basically said, we want to move away from being a working board to more of this, policy governance board and the pendulum. And so I have really worked hard to continue to build tools and supports that help the board directors, maintain that and develop their skills. And of course, there's turnover every year at the board. This year, out of a board of 13, I have 5 new directors. Wow. So really the onboarding is so important, and having some of these tools I think is really critically important to kind of point to them and say when they say, I don't understand the strat plan, you're like, here it is, let me walk you through it. And having a visual is wonderful. I also have developed a board work plan, and within it, so it's basically a whole calendar for the year. Yeah. It's the items that they absolutely have to do. It's the things they've put into policy. It's their fiduciary duties. And so they, and we're going through, is it complete? Is it in progress? Is it, at risk? And so they're tracking these things. Every single board meeting, it's being updated and shared out to them. And so when the board's what are we going to be doing at our November board meeting? We open up that work plan, and we're doing that for the, the committees too. Everything's kind of connected. And so I think trying to create frameworks and resources that are helping the volunteers, and you're getting the most, you're not trying to extract, from them, but they're there and they want to be there and they want to feel useful. And so it's pointing to ways that they're really bringing value and fulfilling the role that they've been elected to the board to do.
I think one thing that you shared with me earlier was that I asked a silly question, what do we do with these? What are we doing? You have this laminated, where do you put them?
Yeah, so they're all so at every single board meeting, they're put out on the table. Everyone has one in front of them. I change them. So I have my first version when we started with the new strat plan. I have my second version now that's got more graphics showing people how things are connected. And we speak to it and we point to it. And the other thing is I also use this as a way to communicate it with my staff. I bring them to staff meetings when we're talking about the strat plan, because obviously you're in your work, you're not necessarily thinking about our 5 action areas, but when you have it in front and you're able to point and say your work is supporting climate change. When we're thinking about the conference and carbon offsetting of, what it is that we're putting on at the conference, or the travel of, the board and the staff, that is directly supporting one of the objectives of our strat plan. And then there's kind of that I can see how my work is advancing the strategic plan. And it's not, you don't always see that.
Yeah.
So having some of these visual cues, I think, is really important. I also like to share it. I mean, I was just at a conference, I think in November, and sharing some of the tools that we're using. And this isn't something I developed. I went to a conference. Somebody else had one of these placemats with their own important items they wanted the board to see, and I was like, that's a great idea. And so you're always kind of building, and I think that's what's so important about this kind of exchange.
Yep.
You're exchanging, you listen,
Yes.
you pull a little piece,
Yep.
and then you take it and you adapt it, and maybe you innovate, and then you share it back again.
That's amazing. Well, this is a fantastic tool. I think I'm just going to use it and borrow it from you, and then create some visual cue at my office as well. Because a lot of the time I see a lot of the people, many organizations, they talk about strategic plan. They develop one and then they park it on the side. And then really business as usual on this operational side. So it's a huge disconnect, and I love that having that visual to bring the two pieces together. Otherwise, you don't know what you're doing. Every day, you're just kind of going through the motion, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you have to have that core operations. There are certain things that we do, right? Like membership renewals and just like answering questions. Like you have that core. Not everything that you do is going to be necessarily something that you're like, oh, that fits under this, heading. And that's okay.
Yes.
But then that's where, like, for us, that like connects to the mission, right? There's something that I can point to in probably all of the work that we do that connects to this particular graphic. And I think that's really important for the team to see, and our members to see, and our partners to see too.
Yeah.
So actually, I mean, even on that, like, we get asked for a lot of different partnership and opportunities, or to support different projects, or to collaborate on other initiatives. And so we really even use this as part of our decision-making framework. So we have something that's like another tool that we've developed that really says, like, what's the opportunity? Is it national or international? Well, then yes, we can consider it. Is it local or provincial? Well, then no, that's the domain of one of our, provincial, associations. And so, like, by going through, some of these kind of questions, it really ends up filtering through our strategic plan. Does it impact, and support one of our national policies, which are represented in our strat plan? And so it also then helps us when we have to say no to provide a reason, because nobody likes saying no, right? You're like, oh, you asked me, I'm flattered. But you can't say yes to everything.
Absolutely.
So,
well, this is a fantastic tool. Now, my last question. We've been going on, and I think one thing that I've learned from our conversation is that you are not afraid to ask and go out and learn and listen, and you listen really, really well, and you take action after you listen to new ideas and listen to the members' need. You take that and do something about it. One of the biggest challenge that I've seen, at least in the industry, short time that I have been working with the industry, is mental health. Leaders are lonely. I mean, it's not just nonprofit leaders. Actually, for profit leaders, I'm also lonely. You need to be able to network with the people who share the similar pain as you. And sometimes it's hard because we often put our head in the sand. I always tell my staff, like, sometimes I just put my head in the sand. I don't want to pay attention to everything else, and I just want to get my stuff done. And that sometimes does not serve me well, because my head, in the sand, there's only you and your thoughts, and it keeps spinning the same way, so it's not helping me to dig myself out of the hole. So what have you been doing to maintain that peace and passion that you have naturally have?
I have a fantastic family support. My husband is also in a nonprofit space, and so we can actually talk about certain things, and you know, and even strategize or brainstorm when there's challenging situations, or just even like something interesting, right? Like we're interested in kind of having that dialogue at the end of the day. My parents are an amazing support. Like I really could not do this work without family support. I have 2 daughters, and they have grown up with grandparents kind of shuttling them and filling in the spaces when I can't be there. And so you have to kind of live with that parent guilt. Sometimes you can't always go to the school event. And, you know, but I'm very fortunate to know that my parents are there taking the photo. The other thing is for me is that I have a really amazing network of other kind of CEOs and executive directors. I meet regularly with my counterparts across Canada in the provincial, you know, associations. I have a group right here in Ottawa that gets together regularly for like just drinks after work and to kind of chat about, you know, everything like governance, like, I mean, things that most people I think would just like maybe start to fall asleep, but we get excited like, ooh, tell me about your onboarding program. You know, we're kind of nerdy that way. And the other thing is during the pandemic, I really formed a close relationship with my international counterparts. And I'm really fortunate that, you know, one of them has put in calendar invites every kind of 4 to 6 weeks. We get together virtually.
Oh, wow.
And share, you know, we're like looking at each other's annual plans or, you know, thinking about a statement we're going to make for, you know, a big National World Town Planning Day event in November. But more than that, we're there to kind of support each other, and you know, we know about each other's families and what's happening. People share very personal things about where they're at, and now we're meeting once a year. Coming out of pandemic, we said, you know, we need to meet in person. So we're meeting once a year in person. We've done it 2 years now in a row. It's amazing. And we spend like a whole day, and we're doing financial benchmarking between the organizations. We're looking at, you know, recognition of credentials, but we're also just talking about like, again, having that personal relationship of like, where are we at? What books are we reading? What are we thinking about? And then this year we had, knowing again, it's not just like lonely for people in our positions, also for the elected leadership. So we brought our presidents and chairs together and gave them space to have those conversations, brought in a governance person, but then just gave them time without us. And they found it so valuable. Now they have set up standing meetings where they're coming together to talk about things that they're seeing, experiencing, different governance models. You know, I know some of them are talking about things like consent agendas and what do you include and what don't you include, and just, you know, it's nice because I think it can challenge us as like the chief staff officer. But it also is reinforcing, right? Like, because we're like, you know, what are you doing? What are you seeing? How are you, like, you know, making sure that the workload is reasonable for your board directors or giving them enough time to prepare? And so, you know, they want to do a good job. And this is just another way for them to also feel like there's people in similar roles that are experiencing the same challenges and pressures. And so I'm really happy to see that too. So I think really, but to me, it's about actually putting it in your calendar and not just saying, oh, we should do lunch. You know, you have to put the date in. You have to make it a recurring event. And if something happens, it happens. But like if you don't make that time, it will be eaten up by something else, like without hesitation. There'll be somebody else popping another calendar event into your diary.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Well, that is amazing because you share a lot. I know you do presentation even at CSAE events sharing this particular template and also your board work template. You share a lot. You give back a lot. And with this network that you build and the community support, I feel like you're in a happy place. And sometimes what I see is that some executive directors, they really need that support. But they are sometimes like the way that I describe, and sometimes I act that way, putting the head in the sand and not going out. I feel like the more difficult situation you are in, the more important it is to go out there and just listen and learn and talk to people. And I mean, we're only within our own brain, right? Like there's only so much we know and there's so much knowledge out in this world.
Yeah. Well, and I think something like this podcast
Yes.
is going to help people kind of realize that they're not alone.
Yeah.
You know, and you can always take something, a little piece from a conversation, even if you don't feel like you're in a position to share, right? You have board confidence. You can't speak about all the, if there's drama happening, or like, staffing challenges. But, when you have those conversations, and even if you're just starting by passively listening, to know that you're really, really not alone, I think is an important step.
Yeah, this has been amazing. I don't want to take up more of your time. And thank you so much for sharing so many golden nuggets. And I hope our listeners will be able to learn a thing or two from it.
Thanks, Terry. It's great to be here.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I want to share a bit more about what we do at Altus Financial Solutions. For the past 18 years, Altus Financial Solutions has been dedicated to enhancing the financial management and strategic planning capabilities of hundreds of associations and nonprofits across Canada. Our extensive experience has enabled us to deliver tailored financial solutions that drive growth and enhance sustainability for nonprofits and associations. If you are interested in learning more about how Altus Financial Solutions can support your organization, I would love to offer you a no-obligation 20-minute call. Let's discuss your unique challenges and explore how we would be able to help you achieve your goals.